and it is 2 and an angle of 45 degrees. Phasor current here. So the one equation, so we know this minus Vs bar is actually minus 10 plus 400 I1. Now I am not putting the bars. It's understood that these currents are phasor currents plus J200 I2 equal to 0. So we have an equation with two variable quantities. We need another equation, and because we use supermesh to write this equation, the other equation is going to come from this current source. So the upward current, this current is upward as well. So I2 bar minus I1 bar is going to be equal to IS, which is 2 angle 45 degrees. This is the second equation. Now if we solve these simultaneously, solve 1 and 2 simultaneously, we are going to get the values for I1. You can solve this and find that, and I2. So knowing these two values, we can very easily see that the quantity that we are interested in finding is that VL, the phasor of VL, and that would be equal to this thing, J200. This is the phasor voltage across this thing, and I2. So instead of finding I1, if we just find I2, say using Cramer's rule, we can very easily, by finding I2, then find VL. So suppose we have something found here for the phasor VL. Let us assume it is some value capital V. We say it is some value capital V M, and with an angle say phi. This is a complex number in polar form. So the solution part will give you the ultimate result in phasor form. And the third and the last step that we are going to do is take this result in volts, take this result and apply the inverse phasor transform and get the value that was needed in the time domain. So what do we get here? Vm is going to be written the same here. That cos omega t that vanished initially in this transformation is going to be brought back, and this phi is going to be written here, and this will be the ultimately the result that we are interested in. So when this circuit, when the application of these sources is stabilized and the transients are gone, this voltage across this inductor is going to be found by this expression in this way. This is how phasor transform helps us to solve the circuits. I hope you should be able to solve this yourself. I am skipping solving this because it should be your job, and do not think it's easy that you can skip doing this just like me and then in the exam through some magic you are able to do this. No, you are going to waste a lot of time there if you don't have prior understanding of how to solve this. Let me just give you a little bit more time here and try to see what this I2 would be equal to. So this I1 will be equal to, from this equation 2, this I1 would be equal to I2 minus 2 angle 45 degree, right? I1 would be equal to, I1 can get here to become positive, this get here to become negative. And if we put the value of I1 here using this one, we are going to get from 1 we get minus 10 plus 400 I1, which is actually I2 minus 2 angle 45 degrees, plus I2 is common in both these terms, so we get I2 common, and 500 plus iota 200 is a complex number equal to 0 is what we get. So this is a single equation in I2. All we need is some complex gymnastic. So we have this I2 here in this term as well, and the constant here and constant here. So what do we get? I2 common from all the terms, we get a 400 plus 500 plus iota 200, and we get all the constants to the other side. So minus 10 becomes plus 10, and this minus 2 plus 400 is going to become plus 800 angle 45 degrees. Now this 10 looks quite odd, or a very small quantity as compared to this one. So let us make this a bit big as well. I hope it does not change anything, because this is some patchwork that we are doing. So let us say this instead of this 10, we have 1000 here. So it is 1000 here, it is 1000 here, with a minus sign obviously. So we have 1000 here, and we get 1000 here. Now it's a comparable quantity, and I hope some interesting result can be obtained. So now what do we get here? So our I2 is equal to 1000 plus 800. You cannot add them together. Why? This is in polar form, this is in rectangular form. So you need to make, however you can add these two together. Why? This is both in rectangular form. So 900 plus j 200. So this is in rectangular form, this is in polar form, this is in rectangular form. So you need to keep consideration of all this. Let me use my calculator on the computer, and let me do this and give you the result. So first I add 1000, add it to 800 angle 45. So just for you to understand what the result of the numerator would be, it is 1665. I have rounded this off, and an angle of 19.9 degrees divided by this 900 plus j 200. So now I want to divide this result by this. It's easy in the calculator that I made. I wrote that part, kept that part, divided it by 900 plus iota 200. This is the ultimate current that we got, 1.81. I've rounded this up, angle of 7.3 degrees ampere. So this is I2, the phasor I2, and this VL will be equal to iota 200 into 1.81 angle 7.3 degrees. This iota 200 can also be written as 200 angle 90 degrees in polar form. So multiplied by 1.81 angle 7.3 degrees. So 200 can be multiplied by 1.81 to get the magnitude, and 90 will be added with this to get the angle 97.3 degrees. And here we are going to get, using my calculator, I can just multiply them together with j 200, and we got 361. I have rounded it up, and this is the VL, the phasor voltage that we are looking at. So using the inverse phasor transform, therefore we would say that VLT would be equal to Vm, which is 361, and cosine of 100t plus 97.3 degrees volts is the answer that we are looking for this circuit. Now this is a requirement from you that you should find the Thevenin equivalent of with respect to this. So let us say these nodes are A, B. So with respect to these nodes, the rest of the circuit must be converted to this Thevenin equivalent and then solved again for the same VLT, and the same result must come. If you get the same result, then it is clear that you have done the you have found the proper Thevenin equivalent. And obviously we can see that once this V Thevenin T is known, this R Thevenin is known. I am writing this as R Thevenin, not something else. Why? Because with respect to this, we are going to remove this, get open terminals. Whatever is left is pure resistive network. So we get a resistance here. Had there been some other element like an inductor or capacitor here, then we would not write R Thevenin here. Instead, just like resistances are converted to resistances, L converted to XL and C converted to XC, it's very important that R, L, C together in some form gets converted to impedances. Now this term is known as impedance, and it is a complex number because there is R in it and L and C together in it. This is one quantity. It contains both parts. So it contains real part, it contains imaginary part, and it is a complex number. So just to signify that this reactance is a positive real term, we put a J here, iota outside, so not part of that XL and XC. Then this is much more meaningful. So how the impedances can be computed. Let me give you a small additional comment about equivalent resistances or equivalent impedances. So this is still that same lecture 4.1 that continues. So today the fourth lecture will actually be one lecture, one video clip. I'm not using multiple video clips here. So if instead of a single resistance we have multiple resistances, say this is R1 and R2, now with our circuit analysis knowledge we know that their equivalent is going to be sum of these. And if we have two resistances in parallel, then their equivalent would be a resistance that can be written as R1 multiplied by R2 over R1 plus R2, or this equivalent can be written as in this fashion, that the reciprocal of the sum of the reciprocals is going to be the same thing. LCM here would be R1, R2, it's going to go up, etc. So, however, if in sinusoidal analysis we have say a resistance and an inductance and several resistances, several inductances, and say capacitance as well. So if this is in time domain, that we have an R here, an L here, and C here, and they are connected to a circuit, say, that is making this current flow, that is IT, and I is a sinusoidal current, and it's a sinusoidal steady state analysis that we are doing. Then what would that thing be that can be represented by a single element with the same current, ISS is the steady state current flowing, with the voltage across all of them equal to say VSST, so that voltage is still the same, VSST. However, we want to replace these all of them with a single element. So first thing to note is that it is not possible in time domain to do this, In time domain, we cannot add these together. Although they are in series, the same current is flowing through them, and the voltage across this and this and this will be summed together to get this voltage. Everything is correct, but we cannot represent these three elements as a single element. We cannot do this in time domain. However, in frequency domain, it can be done. In frequency domain, this sinusoidal current would be a phasor current, this sinusoidal voltage would be a phasor voltage, and this thing would be known as an impedance. And for this impedance, the Ohm's law also makes sense. And this is the absolute beauty of this thing. And how this is computed? For this circuit, if we know what is omega, so say the omega is known here, then this Z would be equal to R plus iota omega L minus iota over omega C. Why? Because an R gets converted to an R, an L gets converted to an iota omega L, and a C gets converted to minus iota over omega C. So all these can now be added together. Why? Because this has a unit of ohm, this has a unit of ohm, this has a unit of ohm. This is a resistance, is a real quantity. This is a reactance, it is an imaginary quantity. This is a reactance, it is an imaginary quantity. It is positive imaginary, it is negative imaginary. These two can be added together. This cannot be added. However, this is a complex number. This remains as is. These two can be added together to get R plus iota omega L minus 1 over omega C. This thing is known as impedance. And guess what will be the unit of impedance? Right, impedance would have the unit ohm as well. Why? Because this is an ohm, this is an ohm, this is an ohm, this must be an ohm. And the reciprocal of impedance is known as admittance, denoted by Y, capital Y, and it is called an admittance. And guess what would be its units? Right, mho or Siemens. However, there is a one word of caution, and that suppose I give you that an impedance Z is 40 plus iota 30 ohms. Now this tells that the inductive effect is dominant because it is positive. Had this Z been 40 minus iota 30, it means it is more, its capacitive effect was dominant to get this impedance. So this is the resistive part, same, but here it is positive, means it's inductive reactance, and it is capacitive reactance. So if I ask you to find the admittance of this impedance, some people quickly think that the admittance would be 1 over Z, and quickly, without paying much attention, they write it like this, which is wrong. Why? Because this is Z, and 1 over Z has to be 1 over 40 plus iota 30, and this is not equal to this thing. This is not equal to taking this reciprocal of this and that. It is not equal to this nor equal to this as well. So don't think, okay, you have handled this 1 over iota by writing this minus J. No, it is still not equal to this thing. It is something different. And although I can do it using my calculator, but if we take the conjugate of this thing and we multiply it using the conjugate of the denominator, we get something like this, and it is going to be 40 minus iota 30 over 40 square plus 30 square. So we are going to get something like 40 divided by 40 square plus 30 square. What would this be? $2,500 minus iota 30 over 2,500, and this is 1 over z, the admittance. So Siemens is the unit that we will be using. So it is much different from 1 over 40 and much different from 1 over 30. This would be something like 40 divided by 2,500 would be 0.016 minus iota 30 divided by 500, that would be 0.012 Siemens, and 0.016 is not 1 over 40. So this should be clear. And now you have also learnt about impedance, and admittance. Sometimes it's easier to talk about admittance than impedance. However, we will mostly stick to resistance, reactance, and impedance. And I hope you can now solve almost all the questions that would be there in the chapter 10 of the book as an example, or as end chapter problems. And in the next lecture, that would be the lecture on Monday, we are going to learn about a very important tool that helps us and gives us an insight about phasors and the relationship between phasors, and that is known as a phasor diagram. Remember, diagrams, graphs, charts are the special tools for an engineers, and they present and represent a lot of information in a small space that can be quickly looked up and understood about a situation, a system, or a configuration. So therefore it's very important for us to learn the various diagrams and the tools and the graphs and the charts that we come across throughout the degree program. So this is it. This is lecture number 4, and it teaches you about the phasor and the phasor transform. It builds on the previous lecture we have seen. So let me just recap it a bit. Although while in the real world we are dealing with real sinusoidal voltages, but we can see that we can write this thing as the real part of this complex quantity. This is a complex number, but using Euler's identity, the real part of this thing is still the same thing. So if this is the input and this is the output, then we can say this is the input and this is the output, the real part of this complex number. Now if we just drop saying real and real, we just stick with, this is the beauty of mathematics, that we can say, okay, ignore that real thing. If this is the input, then this is the output. And then we saw this very important thing, that this appears in all the terms in an equation, algebraic equation. Therefore, we saw that it can be eliminated. So what we were left with were complex quantities known as phasors. So these were what were phasors, and how phasors can help us solve or do steady state analysis for linear circuits is what we are studying in this chapter, and we have almost done it, except for looking at this phasor diagram, which obviously if you have revised your complex numbers, then you would know that complex numbers can be plotted on a complex plane, and we will look to that in the next video, inshallah.